Welcome to the Hidden Bookcase. Come through and get cozy. Pick a book, your favourite book, that's the one that opens this room. Inside you'll find a warm fire, a loving cat, and a wide skylight to the stars.
And a dangerously high to be red pile.
I'm Morgan, I use they them pronouns, and I am the inherent eroticism of gender-affirming care.
I'm Soren, I use he him pronouns, and I am a motorbike interrupting you just as you finish your take.
I'm Leon, I use he they pronouns, and I am someone who isn't diagnosed, but really what else could it be?
Soren and I have been friends for over a decade, and the two of us are always swapping books.
Usually, the two of us take it in turns to recommend one another a favourite read. Today we're chatting about Listen Closely with Leon Egan.
So let's get into it. Da, 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 da.
Hello, Leon.
Hello, welcome.
Hello.
I feel like this is the first time I've ever interviewed somebody on the show that I've actually met in person, so that's very exciting. I'm like, wow, you're real. Not that everyone else isn't real.
No, everyone else is fake, actually.
Oh, okay.
I knew it all along.
Oh my god. We've just been talking to ourselves, Morgan, this whole time.
Oh no.
Incredible. So, how do we all know each other? This is kind of a complicated question.
Our shows are friends, and now we are friends.
I love that, actually. That's beautiful.
Succinct.
Yeah, I have a pretty vivid memory, actually, of just writing. I think I listened to the first few episodes of Attic Monologues and just made an entire thread on Twitter back when it was fine. And like episode by episode was like, I love this show so much. And then like a little while later got a message back and was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry I missed this, but thank you. And then after that, I think it was just, yeah, our shows are friends now.
Exactly. Yeah, I remember, I felt like my first interaction with you was messaging being like, promo swap? Maybe? Hello? Hi.
Yes, yeah.
But it wasn't like, did I even say that was me? Or was I just like, hello, it's us, the Attic Monologues. We're an entity, we're a hive mind.
You know what? It might have been the entity, actually, yeah.
It's possible. Sometimes I'm like, oh, hi, I'm Soren. And sometimes I'm just like, hello.
I'm the Attic Monologues, yeah.
It's us.
Yeah. I am the attic. I eat the monologues.
Or it's the monologues all flying around in like a storm of paper and whacking the keyboard to form letters.
That's famously how the writing process works. So, you know.
Yeah.
Exactly. But also, Morgan, did you read Loverbirds first? I can't remember. The timelines.
I think so. I had
There
a
you
proof
go.
of it. So
Yes.
I got to read it ahead of time. Yeah. And then
So
I
we're
went,
also-
everybody's getting this for Christmas. Have fun. You're welcome.
As you should. So we're also fans as readers, I suppose, on that level as well.
Mm-hmm.
That's still very strange to me. Like, what do you mean? Like, there's at least one book already out there that people can and have read. That doesn't sound right.
I can confirm it's real because I've seen it in person with you. I've seen you signing it in a shop and everything. It's got to be real. Unlike everyone else on this show, who's obviously fictional.
Yeah.
Yes.
But speaking of, you have one book out. Will you tell us about this new one that is now out if you're listening to this?
Yes. So this is actually my first time talking about this book properly.
Oh my God.
So let's hope I can do a coherent pitch for it. The one line pitch is it is You've Got Mail meets Alice Oseman's Radio Silence. It is about Jude and Aidan, who are two trans kids who have been put together in sixth form work experience at a radio station. They sort of bonded over their shared love of audio dramas, but otherwise about as different from each other as they can be. Aidan is a sort of earnest puppy dog of a boy, and Jude is guarded and withdrawn after some pretty bad experiences, socially speaking. However, Aidan may be carrying more secrets than he wants to let on, and Jude may be more willing to be vulnerable than they necessarily find comfortable. So it's mostly about trans joy and a love of audio dramas and about taking off the masks that we wear for the world.
Oh, that's a beautiful summary.
Yeah.
I did practice that last bit.
Also, I loved this so much. Oh my god.
Yes.
I'm like, no, what's our structure? I can't just gush about this.
I feel like I have to preface with saying that like Leon sent us the PDF on Sunday, and I got a text at like 8 a.m. on Monday, and someone was like, so I finished it.
I did not sleep. It was not a good idea. I had work the next day. I was real tired, but I was just having a really good time, which actually coincidentally also happened with Radio Silence, where I was like, I started reading it late at night and I was like, well, I just can't stop. So
yeah,
it reignited that feeling for me, which I haven't had for a while. So thank you for that.
You're so welcome. Now I need that as well. It's been a while for me too.
You know, when a book is just so good that you're like, well, it doesn't matter that I've got responsibilities tomorrow.
Yeah.
You know? This time I didn't fall asleep in a field, which is what happened with Radio Silence. So, you know, that was better.
That's so Radio Silence, though. Is there not a scene like that in Radio Silence? I definitely remember there being a field.
Yeah, I was at like a music gig thing, and then we all like sat down for a bit, and I was just out. You know? But anyway, for those who have not listened to one of our interviews before, we have a structure. And the structure is... We will go with non-spoilery questions first, for those of you who are maybe thinking about reading this book, or maybe you've started but you haven't finished quite yet. Or that's all of the options. That's everything. And then afterwards, we'll get into the spoilery things. We'll get into the meat. Morgan, do you want to kick us off?
I can do, yes. This book is a love letter to the audio drama community, and especially in the UK, and to trans creators specifically. Do you remember what sparked the idea to write something about this unique little space?
I wish I had like a cooler answer for this, of like a moment of inspiration. Except, so essentially what happens when you're offered a 2-book deal, or when you're almost offered a 2-book deal, is, in my case, I pitched Loverbirds out into the world. And I was waiting to hear back through my agent, and my agent had gotten back to me and said, okay, so HarperCollins is thinking of offering you a 2-book deal. Do you have any other ideas? And I was like, no, I've just written a book. No, what do you want from me? Yeah. And she was like, could you come up with one in like a couple of weeks? And I was like, no, absolutely not. And I spent like a day of going, I will never come up with another idea again. Absolutely not. I can't do that. And then I was just like, hey, what if audio dramas? What if, you know, like what if, and it helps a little bit that it's a rom-com, because you can a little bit just kind of spin a wheel with rom-coms. It's always like okay, 2 people are going to fall in love, character trope A and character trope B, and there's a B plot that has to facilitate that. And it's the B plot that's essentially the shape of the book, really, that kind of shapes itself around the characters. And I was like, I don't really know if I know enough about anything to slot it into a B plot. I had Liverpool for Loverbirds and ADHD, and I was like, well, I've got both of those things, so that's sorted. But I was just like, okay, well, what if they just let me write about my special interest? Is anyone going to stop me if I try and write a whole book about my special interest? And nobody did. And so I just was like, okay, I'm going to write about what interests me. And that as a space is very trans. So that lends itself to these trans characters perfectly. And I just, as I kept going, was just waiting for someone to go, hey, maybe this is a bit niche. Maybe we widen this up a little bit. And with every like chapter that nobody told me that, I just was like, yeah, okay, I'll keep going until someone stops me.
Incredible. I feel like obviously we're the target audience in this niche, but it was so fun seeing all these little things like the blanket fort references and the interrupted takes and things. I was just like, wow, I've never related to anything more. I think the bit that really got me, I literally stopped and showed my housemate, was the hashtag audio drama Sunday shout out that you get so excited about. I was like, the amount of these that I've written.
Yeah, there's so many like moments in there that are very much like, it's I guess it's possible to sort of skim past if you don't really know what it is, or if you're not involved in the space, but it's like, this is for the people who are. Yeah.
Well, Well,
And
as
for
one
me
of the people who I was kicking my feet. I was having a great time.
I was like, how many people are actually gonna get these? I don't care. This is written for me specifically. I'm good.
Yeah.
I get all the references.
It's so much fun. And also, to be fair, I think it will get people interested, maybe, if they haven't been. Because I think a lot of people, like reading Radio Silence as an obvious point of comparison, because it also involves audio drama, hadn't necessarily listened to much and then went off and did. So, segueing a little bit on that, you also write audio drama. Oh my goodness. And make audio drama in general. But would you say that your writing in audio drama has an influence on your prose, or the other way around?
I think maybe a little bit in terms of like, so I used to think I was really bad at dialogue. I used to like sort of uni kind of creative writing courses and things like that. I always thought I was more description based and never very good at natural sound and dialogue. And then at some point something must have switched, because that was, as soon as I was like pitching Loverbirds, that was the first thing that came up with at every stage of the editing process, was just people going, okay, we love how natural the dialogue sounds. It's the sort of very natural sounding conversation of it all. And I was like, that's so weird, because I thought I was really bad at that. But I think maybe script writing helped, where it's, you've got no choice but to make it sound like two people having a conversation, because that's all you've got on the page pretty much. So I wonder if that helped quite a bit with my prose. I don't know if I'd be much good at description anymore, actually. I just throw in an SFX and see what happens. But it's, you know what, two people can have a chat, and that's I'll take that as a skill.
I've definitely found that experience as well with Attic. I used to be very much description based, and now I'm like, they look at the sun, I guess, and one of them has colourful hair. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like also because you're like listening and editing, and like you're listening to the actors bring those words to life, that probably helps with like making intonation sound a lot more real, because they bring that like humanity to the words, and you sort of start to bake them in retroactively to the writing.
Yes. Yeah. Like I think my writing got a lot better, even just between like seasons 1 and 2 of Tell No Tales, just from having heard the actors record it with me and having heard them sort of stumble over certain lines that didn't get written right. And that they'll stumble and I'll go, okay, this is because of my writing. How would you say it? And just, you sort of gradually learn from that. I also, what you just said about the, like, someone's hair was a certain color as well. I didn't think about that, but the attitude of audio dramas towards describing what a character looks like, I think has affected how I describe characters in books too. Like I will generally give someone hair and a sort of vague silhouette, and that's about it. It's like you get an outline of a person, but otherwise fill in the rest yourself, which is a very audio drama thing to do. I think the sort of space really encourages fan art and interpretation and things like that, but tends to not try and override what a listener's interpretation of a character is. And so I don't know if that's the norm in books at the minute, but it's definitely affected the way I describe characters.
And I guess you don't have these two on the cover either. You have a beautiful rainbowy, very cool cover, which I really like. Now that you said this, I'm like, oh, I kind of want to see fan art of June.
You know what? If we put it out into the universe, I would also really like to see fan art of them. So like, just general encouragement.
Speaking of making audio drama, when are we getting The Night Market and Unfathomable Depths as actual podcasts? Because I personally need to know the merchant's backstory. Like, I need to know that. I need to know if Fowler lives.
Okay. So I laughed out loud when I saw this question, because I had opened it on my phone while at the time writing the pilot episode for The Night Market.
Oh my god.
Oh my god.
Okay, so it's not like a full, it's just a pilot episode for each show. Ideally, this might have to be edited out if anything goes wrong, but ideally it will already be out by the time this episode comes out. Because I'm hoping to get an episode of each one out before the book does. But I have been in contact with the narrators for the audiobook. So there's a narrator for Jude and a narrator for Aidan. And they have both, in theory at the minute, agreed to voice for each of their respective podcast episodes. So I'm having a lot of fun writing something fictional from the fictional characters' perspectives at the minute. But it is, like it's the more that I write of like, oh, this is just a pilot episode just to sort of get a vibe for it. And I'm, like I want to explore. I've got little nuggets of the merchant's backstory and everything that happens on the anglerfish and things like that. And I have them in my mind. I'm like, what if I did just write it? But I almost certainly wouldn't be able to produce a full season of each. But I'm not going to rule out just like maybe releasing some scripts or something. It depends on how much time I have. I say as someone whose actual audio drama has been on hiatus for a really long time. But at least one episode of each is what we're going for at the minute.
Oh my God, that's so exciting.
So cool. As like a multimedia thing. That's like...
It's mostly because I searched everywhere for an episode of, was it Universe City from Radio Silence?
Yeah.
And I was like, I'd finished that book and I was like, there is no way that there hasn't been at least one produced episode. And I think there's snippets, but it's just what was already in the book.
Yeah, on Alice's YouTube. But there's no additional stuff.
Yeah, like I want one episode start to finish where I'm like, I want to see how the structure of an episode plays out and like hear the credits and things like that, you know? Like I want just one. And so I was like,
immersion.
Yeah, exactly. So I was like, I have to do this for the me that couldn't find that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love this. I guess following on from that, given that you're now writing from your characters, I guess, because you're writing these episodes as you would write them, but obviously also as Jude would write them and as Aidan would write them. How was writing those sections of this book? Was it difficult to like write with your own voice, but also with their voice? And also, was it difficult to like balance those genres? Because obviously we've got like a lot of like fantasy going on in the Night Market, and then a little bit of horror from Unfathomable Depths. So it's a bit.
It was a bit tricky, yeah, because it was so the two ideas for each of the podcasts originally just sort of came from, okay, so what's the most podcast, you know, like what's all of the sort of the really common tropes boiled down into two separate ideas. So you've got the sort of the isolation, like every sort of space, underwater, Arctic type vibe in Unfathomable Depths all sort of boiled into one. And then for the Night Market, it's all the kind of the museum shows. And so like there's a little bit of like Monstrous Agonies in there and a little bit of like Mist Home Museum and that kind of thing. And they're two sort of separate sides of the audio drama sphere, but they've all got those very common and lovable tropes wrapped into them. And then kind of building from there of trying to write from each of their perspectives. With Jude, I think it was a little bit easier because so much of the book was shaped around what Jude would consider for an item in an episode of the Night Market. So like because all the chapter names were named after an item and things like that, that it was all sort of, okay, so what would Jude, a unconfirmed but definitely autistic character who's struggling to like interact with the world around them and struggling to figure out what the people around them want from them and that kind of thing, like what would they want in a magical world where they could get these items and how would they feel about it? So all of the sort of like the spectacles of social sapience and that kind of thing, where it's like Jude is just someone going through the world hoping that they can figure out if someone's smiling at them in a nice way or a mean way, and the sort of the writing of it just kind of spun out from there. And then with Aidan, it was a little bit trickier because so much of how I imagined Aidan's writing style is informed by what they're kind of repressing, which then made it a little bit harder to kind of dig underneath. And there's, I don't know if this is spoilery or not, but we can cut it, I think, if it is. But there's a sort of chapter nearer the end that has a more extended clip of what an Unfathomable Depths script might look like, that I think because of where it came in the book, it was then helped a little bit sort of dig into, oh, why is Aiden like that? You know, like why is he so endlessly cheerful, and is that sustainable? So I think the between it kind of both writing the book and writing the snippets of the podcast, I think informed each other as it went, which was really fun.
That's lovely. I feel like I'm boiling them down a bit by saying this, but I feel like it's very nice to have Aiden, the like happy-go-luckier, puppyish one, having this like very scary horror podcast, and then Jude having something that's actually like, you know, it's got a little bit of darkness in it, but the night market's like quite hopeful and whimsical and light in a weird way.
Yeah, just the phenomenon of like the worst like podcast villain like that you've ever heard in your life is always voice acted by just the friendliest, most like the sweetest person you've ever met, and then the mic turns on and they'll become horrifying.
Oh my gosh, I walked downstairs just earlier. My housemate was listening to Wooden Overcoats. And I was like, oh, you're listening to Wooden Overcoats? And they were like, oh yeah, I didn't know you knew it. And I was like, yeah. And then I was like, oh, Felix Trench is like really nice, and he does like a lot of stuff at the podcast festival. And she was like, oh, he sounds really mean here. And I was like, no, he's so lovely.
It was funny when we were drafting these questions, because I went, yeah, the two genres, YA romance and horror, because in my brain, I was like, yes, podcasting logic says just because the night market is currently fantasy, by the end of season 1, there'll be a big plot twist where the plot will be revealed and it will become a horror podcast. That's how it works, right?
That's how they all work. Yeah. And I think a little bit, I can't avoid that trap. Like, that's just, I don't think I was even doing that intentionally, but yeah, you're right. Like, there will for sure be a turn into, oh, this is where the plot starts. There's after little snippets the whole way through, seemingly into like unconnected stories, and then suddenly, yeah.
I think that makes sense as it being like a love letter to this genre and medium. That's kind of a unique quirk of audio dramas, is that they usually have these very slow starts that just sort of ease you in, and then suddenly the plot attacks you from behind a bush.
Yeah.
Throw in an extra question here, which is like, with that pacing in mind that we're also familiar with, is it hard to then do like novel type inciting incidents, because you have to do them like so fast, and like you don't get that familiarization with the characters and slow build up of the world, and you kind of just have to jump straight in?
Yeah, it is. It's something that I struggle with. In pacing in novels is something that I really struggle with. I hadn't really thought about those being linked, but I do, yeah, because I much prefer longer form, like a sort of season-long script. So yeah, I think that probably is part of it. Because I always end up with like in both cases, I've been told this is a YA rom-com. It should probably be about 70,000 words. In both cases, I've come back with about 90-something thousand, and they've gone, okay. Wow. Can we at least try and get it down to 80? And I'm like, you get 85. That's my final offer. That's all I can get rid of. And it is always a struggle, because I want to spend way too long on the equivalent of a beach episode, or like, they're just hanging out at lunch and there's nothing but just a group of friends having a chat. And, I get to the editing stage and they're like, okay, but does this inform the plot? Does this inform the main character's arc in any way? And like, no, but they're vibing. We learn about them. It's fine.
It's a bottom episode. Come on.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot to be said as well for letting the characters breathe a little bit sometimes.
Yeah.
Letting your reader breathe as well.
Yeah. Which I'm quite lucky with, to be fair, because I tend not to have very plot heavy stories. So because they're already very character led, most of the book is just them vibing, to be fair. But I want more of it. I want them to vibe for longer.
I could have happily read like 50k more of them vibing. I was having a great time. So
I mean, don't enable me, because I will.
This is when you set up like a Patreon and you just release like weekly episodes of just like just writing bits of them like having lunch and going to podcast festival again, and little like they're brainstorming season 2.
This is dangerous.
The formula.
Oh my gosh.
I have no time and many ideas.
Speaking of, I suppose, the interpersonal character dynamics and how much fun those are, we have two trans protagonists here. And it's quite rare, I think, to see even just two trans protagonists, but especially to see two trans protagonists in a romance together, or a T4T romance, as you may call it. What drew you to that and writing that? Was it just sort of a natural consequence of doing the audio drama theme? Or was it like a deliberate thing?
You know what? I don't think it was deliberate, but it because I hadn't really thought about it being so rare for it to be like, yeah, two trans people falling in love. Because as soon as I saw that and was like, wait, no, you're right, and thought about every like trans rom-com that I read, which again, is still comparatively rare on its own.
Yeah.
But yeah, like all the ones that I can think of are either a cis main character falling in love with a trans person or vice versa. But I don't think I'd done that consciously. I think honestly, it could just be that my gender at the time was a little bit wobbly, and I was like, oh, they, them, or he, him? Why not just split that into two characters? Like we'll have fun with that.
I love that.
Inside you, there are two wolves.
Yes, and they're both trans.
Yeah, I feel like I can't think of a single rom-com, to be honest. I feel like I do seek out a lot of trans. There are inevitably some that I've missed, but I was like, T4T, YA, and I could only think of the Andrew Joseph White novel.
Yes.
And that is
which
not
very
a
different
rom-com.
vibe.
Not a rom-com, no. Exactly.
I'm taking recommendations, though. If anyone hears this and has any suggestions, I'm taking recommendations.
Yeah, it was so refreshing to see. I really enjoyed that aspect. I feel like it was one of those things that I didn't really consciously realize was so rare, or that I'd been missing it until I read this book. And then I was like, wait a second. Oh my God, this is so fun. This is so nice.
There's no having to explain.
Yeah, to skip all of the stuff about like, oh my God, are they gonna hate me because I'm not cis? And it's like, that's not really a concern for either of the characters. There's other concerns that they have, very much so, but that bit isn't really like on the table.
Yeah, like that's one thing I wanted to make it really clear, that like sort of both of their sexualities from the start kind of thing, where it's like, yeah, so there's no agonizing here over how they perceive each other and whether they perceive each other correctly in terms of their sexualities and each other's genders and things like that. It's like, no, they're just, the fact that they're trans has very little impact on their romance, except for the fact that Jude was like a little bit obsessed with Aiden after he came out. But like, that's normal. We all get a little bit obsessed with trans people who come out before us. That's
exactly
fine and normal. Yeah.
We all have that guy in the year above us who we anyway. Yeah. Morgan knows.
I'm familiar, yes. Yeah. And then, you have the person in your friend group who comes out and everyone flocks to them like a duckling.
Okay, no, this is embarrassing now. But yeah, lovely to see trans characters hanging out. And also to have a non-binary neopronoun user, because I know we don't have any questions about that. I want to slide that in there.
Yes.
Also extremely fun. And to see like different aspects of being non-binary.
I think like part of that as well is that I have, especially since joining the audio drama community, I have made a lot more friends who use neopronouns, and I have noticed myself struggle with them a little bit. Like, especially like I see the way that a lot of cis people struggle with they, them pronouns. And I'm like, oh, it can't be that hard. And then sometimes I'll encounter neopronouns that I've never encountered before and go, oh, this is a little bit tricky at first, but you just figure it out. You just get used to it. You practice. That's the whole point. And like, it was nice to be able to get into the habit of writing Harper's pronouns and sort of be like, yeah, it is literally just a case of practice. It's a skill issue. Once you practice it, you get used to it.
I also love that little moment where Jude's mum is like, if Harper ever wants to come over, and then like flips them. It was so cute.
Yeah.
The earnesty.
Yeah, the adults in this book are trying.
She's a little
they're not
confused,
succeeding, but they're trying. Yeah.
I feel like maybe we're circulating towards spoiler territory here, actually.
Whoa. I feel like we've firmly dunked at least a leg into spoiler territory at this point.
Just the left one.
Just the left one. So, spoiler warning, everybody.
Yes, that's a good point. Yeah, spoilers.
Run away.
We're kind of talking around it, but this is the point now where if you haven't read Listen Closely, pause the episode, finish it, enjoy it, savor it, stare at the ceiling and think about your life, and then come back.
How did you decide which audio drama references made the cut and which didn't? And how much did you think about accessibility to non-audio drama fans when writing? Which I know we've already talked about a little bit, but especially in your picks, your vibes.
Yeah, with the picks, it was tough. Because at first, like early drafting, I was just sort of, as I was going, like, tee and there's an audio drama here, like that kind of thing. And it was either like what I'd just been listening to or something like that. And I was just like, oh, get to name drop one. And then as I was going on, I was realizing, wait, hang on. I've got a list. I've got a whole list of audio dramas I want to mention. And now that this is a thing, I'm going to have to curate this in some way. And so what I ended up doing was making sure that bar one or two examples that were chosen, so like wooden overcoats I put in there specifically because I wanted to use the quote, the other people are all there is quote for the sort of opening of it. And even though the show is finished now and they don't do live shows about it anymore, like for a while there, when I thought audio drama live show, I thought wooden overcoats because they were so prolific with it. Like it was just during their final season, they were doing a show like every week for every episode or every other week or something like that. And it was like, that was my main access at the time to physical audio drama spaces and stuff, which is really nice. And so I had to have that as a little cameo for like London Podcast Festival. I think there might have been a brief mention of the Magnus Archives, just as like I see that people over there are talking about this show and therefore are here for audio dramas. But the rest, I think I made sure that every other show in there was trans-led. And that was my way of like narrowing it down. Because there's a few shows that I really wish I'd been able to mention that the Vesta Clinic. I love the Vesta Clinic so much. It's one of my favorite shows in the world, and I didn't mention it, and I will be apologizing to AMC for that forever. But like, it was just, that was my one boundary that I drew was, okay, if I have to keep this, to a reasonable number of shows to name drop, I'm going to make sure it's trans-led shows because that makes sense for the vibe of this.
It says something about the audio drama community that I did not notice that at all. I was just like, yeah.
It's just a pretty vague, like, yeah. There's most of them. And as for like sort of making it like accessible for people who maybe aren't already in the space, I think a lot of that I was just kind of hoping my editor would do. Like a lot of that I was like, I genuinely, like I have no idea what's normal anymore. Like I struggle to explain the concept of a fiction podcast to some people. Like it's just, you forget that you're kind of in this little bubble, and then you go out to someone and they're like, oh, you have a podcast? What do you talk about? I'm like, okay, no, let me explain. It's like, so radio plays, right? Like that you've got to figure out where to start in this explanation. So for the most part, I was just writing my little shout outs and then hoping that when it got to the editor, who only really knew about audio dramas through me, or like when I pitched this idea to him, he was like, oh, like The Archers? I was like, you know what? Yep. It's a start. I will take this as a jumping off point. So he would then be the one to read it over and just kind of pray that, okay, well, if he doesn't get something, he'll let me know and we'll figure out how to make it more accessible. But I think it was mostly, there wasn't a lot of that. I think a lot of it is a kind of trust your reader kind of thing, where it's kind of, people are inclined to skip over the small bits that don't make sense to them and still be able to fill in the blanks. So if there's like a couple of words that might feel like a niche audio drama reference, most people can read something that doesn't immediately make sense to them, go, okay, that's an audio drama thing, but it's clear to me from context what's going on in this sentence and what the meaning of it is, I think. I hope, anyway.
I mean, reflecting on it, I feel like it does, like if you went into it thinking, oh yeah, podcasts are like when people talk about crypto or something, or the manosphere, then you would realize that, like, obviously Judah's like, oh, I want to know what happens on the next episode. Like, I want to know what happens to this character. Like, you would quickly understand, like, oh, this is like a TV show, but in your ears. I feel like you would just pick that up naturally from reading.
Yeah.
I do feel having to say the Archers. I appreciated the Archers reference in this book as well. I was like, I'm always like, like the Archers. Whenever I'm trying to explain this to people.
I always go, have you heard of the Magnus Archives? And they go, no. And I go, have you heard of Welcome to Night Vale? And sometimes they'll say yes. And I'll be like, amazing and in. And if they don't, I'll be like, radio plays. And then I just devolve. And I don't even think about stuff like the Archers. I'm just like,
sometimes pattern pressure works.
I need to listen to that.
I actually haven't heard it, but I know that it's like one of those where it slots in somewhere to that spectrum that you've just mentioned, where a lot of people who don't listen to audio dramas will at least have heard of it and know its basic premise.
Yeah, I feel like it's that thing because you'll have heard it accidentally, maybe getting into a cab where they've got the radio on or something, and then you're like, oh, it's this thing. And then, even if it's not something that they might listen to, they might just be aware.
It was one of the ones that a lot of people at Podcast Society used to reference as like, that's how I got into this medium. I'm like, okay. And I went, speaking of Podcast Society, I do find it very funny that it's now a meet cute location.
Oh my God, yeah.
I sent it to the committee group chat and I was like, guys, we're a meet cute. And then I was like, oh, it's actually really devastating that we're shutting down at the end of this year because we have no more members and we've all been playing musical chairs with the committee positions for the last 3 years and it's just been a friend group of 4 of us.
Oh no.
But if people end up going to Exeter, you can restart it because the groundwork is there. You can save dead societies at Exeter. Anything, they'll just be like, yeah, you can have a society, go for it. There's like 450 societies here. So
you know what?
Go
Ideal world.
Restart it. We still have the microphones.
Fantasy scenario in which Listen Closely gets to like Alice Oseman levels of blowing up and suddenly everyone's going to Exeter and restarting this podcast. It'd just be like, I want to be like, Jude, you can. Let's do it.
Weird. Do you think I can use this? I can reference Listen Closely on my alumni funding applications and be like, you should give money to the Attic Monologues because we're bringing people into Exeter because of this book. Because of this.
I think you should. It's worth a shot.
I absolutely. Please do. It's made Exeter iconic for fiction podcasting. It's the only university with a brand for fiction podcasting.
Yeah, we're becoming the second fiction podcast capital of the UK.
Wait, aim high. Aim high. Go for first.
Is London the first one? I guess London's the first one.
I was going to say London's the first one, yeah.
Okay.
Dethrone London.
Dethrone London.
I will dethrone London. I'm a stupid.
Although you will have to compete with Manchester.
A betrayer. I've left my roots behind.
I guess as we're still on audio drama, talking about the whole of the radio scenes, which were so much fun, Jude and Aidan's work experience, and struggling a little bit, especially Jude, with how to map this onto their special interest in a way that's rewarding for them. How was your experience getting into audio drama? Have you also had radio experience? Where did that arise from?
Oh, I've had no radio experience. I did my best with research. If I've gotten something horribly wrong, don't worry about it. It's an alternative universe. With audio dramas, I had the classic. So I had listened to Welcome to Night Vale years and years ago. I think when I was still putting episodes of Welcome to Night Vale on my iPod and like that kind of thing. And then just it didn't occur to me that that was a thing that there were other examples of. And then years went by and lockdown happened. And a couple of friends of mine were listening to the Magnus Archives, and loads of people recommended it to me. And I was like, it doesn't really sound like something I'd be interested in. Like, it's like an audiobook, but it's also episodes and it's horror. That's not really my thing. And then I don't know what happened. There was a spiral that started at some point, but I listened to the audiobook of Lauren Shippen's The Infinite Noise without realizing it was connected to a podcast.
Oh wow.
I was just like, oh, this looks fun. Yeah, this is so I was like, and you know what? To its credit, I can say, as someone who had no idea until about halfway through, that like is perfectly understandable without having listened to it. But I got about halfway through, and there's this scene where Adam and Caleb make each other playlists. Or I can't remember who makes it for who, but there's a playlist involved. So I was like, someone's put this on Spotify for sure. I looked it up, and it was all saying like Adam and Caleb, the Bright Sessions. What's this? This is not mentioned in the book. And so I did a little bit digging and found out it was a podcast, and then started listening to the podcast and the audiobook side by side to try and get, and then got really into like the point at which the book ended and the podcast continued on. I got really into that. I was like, oh my God, that was amazing. I want to listen to more like that. What was that Magnus Archives that someone mentioned? And then it just, from that point, I was lost. It was, I was then in the space and like looking for more recommendations, and it was a very big explosion of, okay, I've got a massive list now.
I feel like we're exactly the same. Like we both listened to Night Vale when we were like younger, and then the Bright Sessions came and dragged us into the world.
And then Magnus, it was the exact same.
And then the Magnus, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the trio of like classic gateway audio dramas that are like carrying the weight of the indie audio drama creators on their backs. It's great.
The big three.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, it's so interesting that you read the book first, though. Because we were so Bright Sessions obsessed. We would be, we've done all of it on our Patreon now as like book club episodes, but we were like, we just want to talk about the Bright Sessions, so we're going to do that. And we were like listening to it together, like as teenagers in secondary school, like yapping about, basically just being Jude and Aiden, yapping about each episode every week and stuff. That I like can't even conceive of reading the book without knowing who these characters are. Like it just doesn't compute.
It was very weird then, sort of, because I came back to the book afterwards and was like, oh, this meant like I was enjoying it, but this didn't have the same level of like mostly obsession. Like I was just at that point I was so like obsessed with this story and these characters, and then I was like, oh no, actually this has 12 new layers of meaning that I didn't know it had before. And I think maybe it didn't. Maybe I was just reading a little bit too deeply into it at that point. But it was weird having kind of stumbled across it so completely accidentally.
Fate. I guess that's a good segue. Because of the neurodivergence on show here. Both of your novels focus heavily on the neurodivergent experience of socialization and the misreading of social cues, which is a refreshing way to incorporate the miscommunication trope. Could you talk a bit more about this?
I can talk for way too long about this, relatedly, actually. I find it really interesting, actually, how, because I didn't mean for that to happen, whereas like I keep joking about how if Loverbirds is the ADHD book, Listen Closely is the autism book. And it's not even officially autism. Like I was gonna just not mention autism at all throughout Listen Closely, because especially when I was like early stage first draft, and I was like just sort of coming to the point where I was like, I think maybe I'm autistic. Like I'm not diagnosed, but I have some symptoms, maybe. And now I am fully time has passed. And I'm like, yeah, I'm autistic. I don't want to get an official diagnosis at the minute for various reasons, but I'm like, genuinely, what else could it be? So like, it's one of those where sort of, I was so wary at first of being like, oh, but what if it's not own voices? What if I've portrayed this slightly wrong, and it turns out it's because I don't have firsthand experience with it. So I think what I ended up doing was throwing in a line at the end there where it was like, they acknowledge that Jude is probably autistic and hasn't had an assessment yet, but like, come on. But it's fully just like neurodivergence impacts more than anything, more than, at least in my experience, more even than gender and sexuality, which did have a huge impact on my teenage years, especially in like a Catholic high school. And like, I think more than any of that, neurodivergence is what will affect your teenage years and how people treat you and how people interact with you, especially if you're unaware of it and they're unaware of it. And as far as anyone can tell, you're just a bit off. And that was very much my experience was, you know, like, I didn't know why I couldn't look people in the eyes. I didn't know why I always kind of kept my head down and couldn't tell when people were joking and when they were actively being nasty and when people were my friends and when, you know, the joke was pretending to be my friend. Like, it just, that was my high school experience, and it very much put me on edge in a similar way to Jude throughout. Whereas I think with Loverbirds, I kind of did the idealistic opposite of my own high school experience. I did, what if actually I had embraced the ADHD? What if I had not cared about being too loud and too much, and like had grown up in an environment where up until the events of the book, nobody had told me that there was anything wrong with that. And I had just been the sort of stereotypical hyperactive presentation of ADHD in a way that people might have spotted what it was and gotten the support that I needed earlier. So that was like, that felt a lot less raw, I think, right in that. Even though it came from a place of, I would have loved to have had access to this as a teenager, it felt a lot more idealistic. And then it came to write in Jude, and it just suddenly was like, oh, being a teenager was real rough. And now I'm inflicting that on Jude too. But it's, yeah. And it was rough for like almost certainly autistic reasons. And yeah, so much of that was then tied into their character that it just became such a big part of the book anyway.
They were really lovely to read. And then also I loved that moment as well. I think it's like one of the first bits of like internal narration we get from Aidan, where he immediately says special interest about audio drama, about Jude. And I was like, this is so sweet. Like, in a way, it sounds kind of like, oh, isn't he kind of being presumptuous? But I was like, oh no, he just gets them. Like,
yeah. I thought about that as well. Like, I agonized over that line a little bit because I was like, okay, but we've not officially established Jude as autistic. Should I take that line out? And I was like, no, you know what? It's like, even if it is presumptuous, even if it is like not quite accurate and we don't know at this point, like, it fits. If the shoe fits. And yeah, and Aidan has clocked that straight off.
Yeah, I think for me that chimed with like my own friendship groups were all, you know, very neurodivergent without us realizing that necessarily when we became friends, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then that has, you know, continually happened to me. Like, I'm more aware of it now, but I'll meet people and I'll be like, okay, I like you. And that actually probably means.
Yeah. Not to armchair diagnose, but you want to be my friend, so there's something going on.
Exactly.
It's been really weird reconnecting with friends from high school since I've moved back to Liverpool. And like, it's been so strange of like people I've not been in touch with for years and kind of forgotten why we were friends in school. And then we meet up again. I'm like, oh, that's why we've immediately clicked despite years of not speaking, because it was the neurodivergence. That explains so much.
Speaking of neurodivergent people, this is a weird segue. But we have Jude and Aidan, who we love. We love them so much. And despite having a lot in common, they're very different. How did you go about developing those two and in like building up their interpersonal dynamics, and also those interpersonal dynamics that change over the course of the book and making them feel so genuine? What's your character process, I suppose, is the question there.
I think for that one, it started with, okay, so for the story I want to tell, I need a character who, for some reason, has shut themselves off from the real world, like who just wants to get lost in fiction and does it as a sort of defense mechanism. I was like, okay, what kind of person needs that? What kind of person turns to fiction for that specific purpose? As you write, you sort of start to get to know the characters a little bit better anyway. So it was then just kind of exploring Jude's headspace and what might have happened to them to like make them shut off from the world and that kind of thing. And I think pretty early on, it was just then a case of, right, so I've got this character who's shut off. How are we going to get them to a point where they don't want to anymore? And it's just the natural solution to that felt like a character who wants nothing more than to be as open as he can with the world, and who feels so undeniably enthusiastic about everything around him that like it's too contagious to not be a little bit excited alongside him. And like, I've always kind of loved that dynamic anyway. I've always loved the sort of the Julian and Cemetery Boys and like that kind of character where it's just like you want to be annoyed at them and you just can't because they're too happy. And so I had a lot of fun with that. And then it needed a little bit of something, I think, to make that dynamic feel interesting. And I think it came to me pretty quickly that they needed to sort of switch as the book went on. That like, okay, Jude's mask is that they actually don't want to shut off the world. They just feel like they have to.
I think you really achieved that like mutual relationship there. And I guess that's what you want when you're writing a romance, is that sense of they've both helped each other and grown together.
Like I was, as somebody who gets very stressed about how books are going to end, I was like, oh my gosh, how are they going to pull it off? How are they going to pull it off? And then you did, like, beautifully. It was really good. And I think it helps that like Aidan is such an interesting character from his own point of view, because you feel like you're actually learning more about him from Jude than you ever do from his own internal narration. He's such a brick wall, even inside his own brain. And like the slow degradation of that over the course of the book, I think was really, really good.
Yeah, that was a tricky thing to do as well, because I, for a while in an earlier draft, just kind of didn't mention that he was struggling at all until right up until that chapter where you get entirely Aidan's point of view and it all kind of comes crashing down. And from sort of editorial notes and stuff, a lot of it was like, we need some kind of implication that this is going to happen. And I was like, I see what you mean. However, I don't think he'd acknowledge this to himself very often. I think that's more than anything, he's hiding it from himself and not the world. So like, it was very much a, hey, can you add some of this? And I was like, you get one line in this chapter and like a slight rephrasing of a sentence in this chapter, and that'll imply it, right? That'll give you let's have some crumbs, and hopefully it worked. But like, yeah, it was very much a balance between you have to give the reader something, but like to what degree would Aidan have acknowledged it in his mind? It was a really interesting problem to have.
We love an unreliable narrator.
Yeah.
And
always.
It's just like, everything's fine. Everything's great. I feel like you achieved that because, yeah, I mean, maybe this is a bit depressing to say, but I feel like there's an element of like, Aidan, no matter what you say, you're growing up as a trans kid at the moment, in this current moment. How great can it be? You know, you can have your friends and it's all great and stuff, but there's got to be some kind of stress, I suppose.
So we all know that when it's Grumpy X Sunshine, the sunshine has devastating going on underneath, and it just needs to be scraped back a little bit and they'll just come crumbling down. And it's beautiful to watch.
No one is ever that happy. And if they say they are, they've got to be lying, right?
Yeah, I feel like I don't know where readers will fall. I picked up fairly early on that this was Aidan's podcast, and I think it was that line about when Aidan was like asking where Jude was up to and was like, wait, at what bit are you at? And I was like, well, nothing else is out, so how would you know? How would you know, Aidan? So as soon as you know that that's his podcast, you're like, well, something's going on. You're not writing that.
Yeah.
Because
no mentally well person has written that podcast. You're so right.
And then no mentally well person is doing backflips to be like, I can't let anyone know, despite the fact that I could probably, maybe it would be fine. Something's going on.
Yeah, doubling down on that secret and being like, absolutely can't tell Jude. I have to like have this whole other persona and keep talking to them with. It's like, do you?
I think you might be a teenager doing insane things because you're mentally unwell and in love, potentially.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah.
I love him.
Yes,
they are fully my children. Like, I love the Loverbirds characters, but they, for the most part, they can hold their own. They can look after themselves. Jude and Aidan need to be held, I need to be the one that does it.
That's very understandable. To be fair, I had a very mean follow-up question, which is, do you have a favourite? So now that you've just called them your children, shall I ask you to pick a favourite between your children?
Actually, I'm gonna go for Aiden purely just because Jude is a little bit too much of me, and there's the little bit of resentment in there of like nobody likes themselves quite that much. So I'm like, you know what? I love Jude. I want the best for them. They're clearly struggling throughout that book, but I'm like, Aiden, my son, please acknowledge what's going on here and get better.
It's Aiden, my wet paper bag of a man, as we would say.
Yeah.
No wonder he wrote Fowler.
Jude is more like a bedraggled cat. You know?
Oh yeah,
you're right. They're swimming just about.
I mean, I was getting big golden retriever, black cat kind of vibes from both of them for sure.
Yeah.
But, you know, Aiden's like a golden retriever, and then when you look at the golden retriever, like, wow, he has really sad eyes. Is he okay?
Yes. Like a sort of shaking Italian greyhound inside a golden retriever.
Give him a little scarf, he'll be fine. He'll be fine.
I have to share this unrelated anecdote, but kind of. But when I used to work at a bookshop, I had this colleague who was like really masculine and really sort of did not show an emotion at all. He was just a lad. And then on his last day working there, we went for drinks, and he got very, very drunk and very, very emotional about leaving. And at one point, we were sat on the tube, and he was looking at me with these big sad eyes, very drunk, and went, I love it when you see I think it was a whippet, the ones that are like greyhounds but smaller.
Yeah.
And there was one there. He was like, I love it when you see them, because sometimes they come into work and they look at you and they've stared into the darkness, and they know that you've stared into the darkness, and they just get you. And I was like, this is the most I've heard this man say in a single sentence, maybe ever. I think about that all the time. And that was all I could think of with the Aiden big sad eyes. He's looked into the darkness for sure.
Oh no. Wow, what a thing to say.
Truly. It sticks with me. This was years ago, and it will forever be in my heart.
I can't really argue with him though, you know, I think he's right.
Yeah.
And sometimes the darkness looks back, and then it infects your friends and tries to kill you.
Yep. Or it wags its tail and puts its muzzle on your lap.
Real. Okay. My final question is, one of the greatest sources of tension in Listen Closely is arguably the breakdown and ultimate reconciliation between Jude and Ava. It's somewhat rare to see a friendship breakup being given so much deserved weight. How did you go about crafting their arc alongside the main story?
I think for that one, I think I'm just incapable of not writing a story that isn't also about your friends. Like, I love a rom-com. I'm always very invested in the romance. It doesn't feel real unless the friendship dynamics around them are also involved. I think with Ava, the story went through a few different iterations from like pitch to this point. There was a version, the original pitch was a version in which Ava was the one who had outed them. And it like she turned out to be jealous of Jude and Aiden and had sort of gotten like spiteful about it. And very quickly it was like, no, that's not the right story here. That's bad. That makes Ava too much the villain here and like kind of unforgivable. And
that's serious.
Yeah. And the sort of the vital part here is that she's hurting just as much as Jude, and we need to be able to like, you know, even if she's not being the nicest person in the world, like she's still, you need to be able to a little bit empathize with the fact that she's hurting here and that Jude is making mistakes in that. And like, it sort of, it was very much a kind of structure as you edit thing, I think, of like trying to pace how the friendship breaks down and kind of how you get more insight into Ava's point of view and things like that, because it's back to the unreliable narrator thing again, isn't it, where it's like Jude is so wrapped up in what's going on with Aiden and with Daniel that they're not really noticing how neglected Ava's feeling. You're only getting these little snippets, and so it's tricky to then show that breakdown happening while also showing that they don't care about it as much as they should in the moment, and that's part of the problem.
Yeah, I feel like that's an interesting sort of thing in parallel with the neurodivergent thing, where I know a lot of people have like issues with like the maintenance, or like if someone's not like in front of them keeping up that relationship like via texting or whatever it might be, doesn't feel as natural. It's like it doesn't come from a place of malice, but it's just like if you're not in front of me, then I'm not thinking about you, but not because I hate you, just because I'm like focusing on what's in front of me, kind of thing.
Yeah. I liked as well the idea of having Ava be the sort of the friend who can teach them about social rules. And like, especially if you're the friend that knows the social rules, then that makes things trickier, because then you're the one that enforces them. And so that makes Ava feel a bit more like the bad guy from time to time. And but it's also that like, so I have one of those friends who, bless her, I won't name her, but she's it's definitely from a place of autism too. It's just that she learned these rules a while back and internalized them as, no, these are the strict rules all the time. But it helped me out a ton, because like some of the conversations that Jude has with Ava, I think there's a paragraph where Jude is talking about like, oh yeah, she's the one who teaches me these things, like you have to ask questions and like that kind of thing, where it's like some of those are ripped almost directly from conversations I've had with this friend who was like, no, here are the social rules and we have to stick to them. There is a nice in between there somewhere of knowing what those rules are and also having maybe a little bit of flexibility that I think maybe Ava doesn't quite reach that middle ground of. But yeah, that was an interesting dynamic to me as well.
I was definitely going to say, I was reading Ava as autistic the entire time. I was like, nobody who hasn't had to study knows that this is exactly what to say, and like is very rigid about it and is like, wait, no one else is upholding the social contract. I learned these rules. What are they for if they're not being followed? No. So I was definitely came across.
The friend that I was just talking about read an early draft and was like, I feel a little bit called out by Ava. And I was like, that wasn't intentional, but I do see what you mean.
I think they came to a very nice place of reconciliation though, with Ava like helping out with the kind of the grand gesture and stuff. That was sweet.
Yeah.
This is a little bit of a complete segue, but I did have to ask this question, and we are at 1:15 already. I was like, we haven't been talking for that long, but I guess we have. I'm just having a great time. But the question that I absolutely knew I had to ask: Aiden plays D&D. It's like one line, but we know that he does. What class does he play? And my follow-up to that, and which class is he, if those are different things? Because we know that Aiden is maybe not as in touch with himself as he might be. And if you know, maybe what classes are everybody else?
Oh, I didn't think about the rest of them.
That's fair.
I've given Aiden some thought now, but I think, right, okay, I don't know if this is like, because I didn't give it much thought at all. I was just like, yeah, these are the answers. So there might be better ones, but I suspect Aiden plays a paladin, but would actually be a bard because it's all a performance.
Oh, I like it.
That's it. That's what I've got there. Maybe Jude would be a rogue.
I can see that. Also, something very compelling about the rogue bard dynamic. That's always cute.
Yeah. And probably play some kind of magic caster, just because I feel like Jude would have the mindset of like, if I'm going to play D&D, why would I play someone who doesn't cast magic?
Yeah. Arcane trickster heavy on the magic items, maybe. I can see that.
Yeah, you're right. Oh yeah, that's the merchant. They are fully just playing the merchant in every D&D campaign.
Like, I've already written this character, why do I need another one? I can do the voice and everything.
Yeah.
Oh god, aside as well, but I loved the little thing about Jude being super into Aiden's vocal training. That was very like trans joy. It was just very funny.
Yeah.
The inherent eroticism of gender affirming care.
Truly. Yeah, that scene in the trans tape was like one of the earlier ones that I wrote. I've done this with both books where I'm like, I don't do chronology. I will write the scenes that are fun, and they will be the first ones that I write. And that was, there was a couple of those. There was the like a couple of the almost kisses, and the like fingers on the chin, and Jude having like a religious experience, and the trans tape scene where it was just like, I'm just going to write this for fun and hope I can fit it into the plot because I'm having a great time with it.
I'm so glad that you did.
Yeah. It was very good.
It was just very nice to see all those moments, because I think it's just, you don't. And then when you have either those close friendships, very close friendships, or even romantic relationships with other trans people, it's like, oh, there's kind of like there's no rom-com blueprint for this, but it's so special. So it's nice seeing it like given that treatment, I guess.
Yeah. I do. I remember like sort of shortly after like the main round of edits on the book was finished, and it was like pretty much done. It was just going to be a few small tweaks. And my editor said, like as this compliment, turned around and said, "This feels like the kind of book that only you could write." And I was like, I find that really touching. And I asked him for clarification. He was like, just because of the very niche, like because of the audio drama elements and the trans elements, it feels so informed by your experience. I was like, I think that's a really lovely thing to say. You're so close, but I think actually what you mean is there is a very small, but like not just me, subsection of people who could write this exact book. And it's the trans audio drama community that like the shared experiences are real.
I mean, kind of tangentially related to that, this was one of the questions that I was like, maybe we could ask this, and then I cut it. But I read your interview with the Liverpool Echo about reading a trans character helping you to come to terms with your own identity. Is it like weird now being in that position of writing that character that like might be the one that like helps that kid, or at least like lets that kid who maybe already knows see themselves? Or is it pressurizing? I'm just curious, basically.
I actually hadn't even considered that.
Sorry, putting you on the spot.
Much to think about. I would love that though, because I like I thought about that with the autism thing, to be honest. Like it was one of those where it's like, should I mention autism a little bit more in this, because maybe someone who's seeing these traits in themselves might recognize it. But then also one of those where it's like, if I don't explicitly call it autism, someone might be more willing to acknowledge that they see this in themselves, and they get right to the very end and go, wait. And so like I had acknowledged it on that side, and I just, I hadn't really thought about, but like it would be lovely. Like if, like that's the kind of thing that would, when people talk about like what success means to them and that kind of thing, it's like, even if I only ever sell one copy of this book or whatever, if someone ever came up to me and was like, I figured out I was trans because of this book, that was it. Like, okay, I'm closing up shop. I'm done. This is the best thing that's ever happened to me. Like that would be amazing.
To be fair, I feel like, I mean, I don't know if this is true for you, but I'm guessing from like the love letters to the North as well that this is, and then also all these communities, like, a lot of YA authors in particular talk about like writing the book that they like wanted or needed growing up. And I was like sitting there thinking like, oh my God, if I'd had this as a teenager, would have been amazing. So I'm sure that will be the truth for someone out there.
Yeah. And it's, I feel like with trans stories as well, more so at the minute than like cis queer stories, they're still rare enough that it still feels really like exciting that it's being allowed to happen. Like there was such an explosion of queer stories for a while that even though it wasn't that long ago, we've gotten so used to having more access to that. And then whereas trans stories are just trailing a little bit behind there, that it still feels a little bit like, wait, people are letting me publish books about trans people,
I totally feel that. I remember watching Dead End Paranormal Park on Netflix, having no idea that there was a trans character in it, and then like the first scene is him like putting his binder on while Cave Town plays, which is quite funny actually. But I was shocked to my core to see a trans man in like an animation that Netflix. And I didn't think that was. I didn't think that was allowed. Basically, I was like, "What? Are you sure?
Yeah.
Like, am I really? He's the protagonist as well."
Did someone sneak this in?
Yeah. one thing that I kind of want to ask, but this is also very much putting you on the spot, Leon. So I don't want to be like, hey, answer this if you're not comfortable. And also, I was kind of struggling myself with how to phrase it. So I'll put it out there because I feel like, especially with what we've just been talking about, it's kind of relevant. But see how you feel. Obviously, this book has Aiden getting outed and Aiden and Jude facing a lot of transphobia and stuff. And you have that beautiful note at the beginning about, the fact that you've made this decision to include those elements of transphobia, but for the reader to look after themselves and stuff. How was it like trying to balance that with what otherwise is a rom-com and is very hopeful and like striking that tone? And do you feel that like reflects your own anxieties as a trans creator to some extent, or?
That's really interesting, actually, because I think so much of me wanted to there's no transphobia doesn't exist in this book. Like, it doesn't happen. I'm ignoring it. Let's live in a world briefly where it just doesn't exist. But I think, especially when the story focuses so much on refusing to face reality, that it would not have felt grounded. Unfortunately, in the world we currently live in, there is no realistic story you can tell in which transphobia doesn't exist. Like, and I hate that that's true, but it's impossible to not acknowledge if you're setting it in a very realistic setting. And so a lot of it was like trying to find a balance where it's like, okay, we're acknowledging it, but I'm not repeating anything. Like, I'm not directly parroting TERF talking points or anything like that. It's not like everyone who has experienced it doesn't already know exactly what people would say in this specific situation. And like, most importantly, not make it the focal point of the book, because it's not supposed to be about transphobia. It's supposed to be about these two kids learning to accept themselves and face the world stronger for it. And so that was mostly, it came a little easier then, where it was like, okay, well, this book is about these characters. It's just then I'm going to focus on the characters. And if that means focusing on how they react and how they grow from it, great. But I'm not going to focus on too much on what happens that they have to then react to,
Yeah, I think it was interesting to see. I think you did a beautiful job of it, and I was like, it's interesting. I was kind of analyzing myself a little bit. I was like, this is stressing me out so much. I think obviously because Jude and Aiden are kids as well, so I was like, I don't like. Obviously, this is reflective of like the moment that we're in and stuff. But thinking about like kids having to go through similar things, and also my adult friends who also shouldn't have to go through those things either. But yeah, no, I think it was like I can see that like, I don't know, almost conversation going on in your head on the page, but not in a way of like, it doesn't feel natural, because it does. But I think representing it in the way that you did was like very honest without it being, I guess, too much for the reader or taking away from.
Yeah, that was the hope I had. I honestly wasn't entirely sure how well I'd achieved it, because it was a tricky balance to strike. But yeah, I'm glad it came off that way, because I was worried about that. Yeah.
I guess it's going to be individual. Like, we've had one hate comment on the Hidden Bookcase in like 3 years. We've been very lucky. And I think that's partially just because we're so aggressively queer about everything that we do that people just don't come near us if they're going to be transphobic about it. But like, it's the audio drama space. What do you expect? Not that we're an audio drama here, but
Yeah, because that was kind of part of it as well, wasn't it? Was this idea that like, because I like, through Tell No Tales, I don't think I've ever had any transphobic comments or anything like that. Like, they've been very careful with where they choose to market, as in the publisher has been very careful with where they choose to market this book, specifically in terms of maybe not drawing Twitter reactions and things like that. But like, yeah, for the most part, I've gotten away without much hate online and things like that for similar reasons. But I think a part of that as well was, whereas Jude comes into it with this mindset of everyone hates me, and Aiden comes in with a mindset of no, everyone's fine. And the reality of it really is that most people are normal about it. It takes one person sometimes to just stumble across you at the wrong time and stir up a storm. And that is always going to feel awful. But like, it's always important to remember that it was just that one person. For the most part, people are chill. It just, unfortunately, the people who aren't are trying to seek you out, you know?
It's a vocal, chronically online minority. The fact that audio drama is so trans is, I think, a thing that a lot of people outside probably don't even know about. So I think that's kind of a nice window into this like little safe space, and that might help more people find it as well. Like, I don't really know what we're all doing here either, to be honest, but I'm having a great time. Like, it seems strange that something so vocally focused would be the medium that everybody goes into. Like, you'd think it would be a written one.
Yeah, the visual component, I think, is a really big draw. Because, as well, I think a lot of the big podcasts that get people into the space are cis-led, but because of that lack of appearance, people are able to headcanon those characters as trans. Like, you look at the Magnus Archives, like AO3 tag, and people have had to start tagging when they're going to write the main character as cis, because everybody's just like, yeah, that's a trans man. He wears skirts. What do you mean? Like, hello? And I think that gateway allows for trans creators to find this niche and then go, okay, now I'm going to write it into the text this time.
And the fact that they can without the barrier to entry, it's the fact that you can just sort of, stumble across this podcast, go, oh, that was nice that I headcanon this guy as trans, and then actually I can just take out a mic and do that myself. That's great.
Yeah, I remember for me, that was where I started coming across, I think, like canon representations more, even like before books, I think, for trans characters, and particularly for like more niche identities, like aromantic characters and gender fluid characters and stuff like that. So that was very nice to see here. I loved Aidan just being like, yeah, I guess Fowler's trans because I'm trans. That was a nice little like, he's just like, okay, yeah.
Guess this is happening now.
But Leon, thank you so much for coming. This was so fun.
I've had a great time. Thank you for inviting me. I've never been on someone's podcast before as not a voice actor. It's strange, but it's lovely.
You know, you could have done a voice if it made you feel more comfortable.
It was great to have you.
It was so much fun.
Yeah. We love to uplift people in our community here.
And also, like, thank you for writing this book, honestly. I had so much fun. And I feel like it's so important. So
yeah.
I never know what the correct way to respond to that is. Is it socially acceptable to just be like, you're welcome? I really enjoyed writing it.
Yes.
You're asking us for the social rules. I don't know how that's going to go for you.
yeah, good point.
We're establishing the rule now that yes, it is.
And I will now live or die by that.
If people want to find you and see what you might be up to next, and also we can cut this out if it's not, but if those episodes of The Night Market and, oh my god, why is it not in my brain?
Unfathomable Depths.
Yeah, Unfathomable
Depths. Sorry, my brain was just like Subnautica, and I'm like, no, that's the video game. Similar vibe. Not right.
Get it though, yeah.
If people want to find episodes of The Night Market and Unfathomable Depths, we'll definitely put all of the links in the description. But are there any of your socials or anything that you want to share?
Yes. I recently changed it to my new name. So I'm on Instagram, I believe I am Leon Egan author.
We can always fix it if not.
Yeah. Instagram is pretty much all I use for book stuff at the minute. But for Tell No Tales, I'm also on Tumblr at Tell No Tales Pod. And also, people should check out the Tell No Tales actual podcast. I do hand out stickers with QR codes at all of my author events, even when it's Loverbirds and people have no interest in the audio drama side of things. I'm like, you're getting a signed book, but you're also getting this sticker. Please listen to Tell No Tales. I think if you just search Tell No Tales podcast, it should come up.
Do you want to tell people a little bit about it for people who might not know?
Oh yeah, I forgot I had to do that. What do you mean people can't just see inside my brain?
We both know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a compassionate take on ghost hunting, where the main character works for a ghost removal company called Better Place and is trying to bring them down from the inside and stop their sort of unethical practices by interviewing ghosts. So there's a new ghost every week, and it just is a sort of character study into each of these spirits and why they stuck around, while also having a bit of a mysterious plot bubbling away in the background.
Beautiful.
There's always an undercurrent plot.
Honestly, kind of a great starter for audio drama. If you read Listen Closely and you went, I want to get into this.
Yeah, it was another one that was kind of based off someone who had just gotten into a lot of audio drama and then went, I see these tropes. I could do that. Beat for beat.
Love letter to the medium.
Yeah.
Next time, to close out Disability Pride Month, we are going to be talking about disability representation in fiction. Again, you guys say, but this time we're talking about it specifically in the context of romance and love and relationships and all of that fun stuff. And we will be doing that with D.N. Bryn, the author of the Guides for Vampires series. So that will be out on 8th, actually. I'm getting confused. July 28th.
Yeah. So, until then, you're always welcome to the bookcase.
Don't forget to scratch the cat on your way out.
Thank you for listening to The Hidden Bookcase, a production of Planar Prod. On this episode, you heard Leon Egan, Morgan Greensmith, and Soren Brywood discussing Listen Closely by Leon Egan. A massive thank you to Leon for joining us for this episode. We could listen to you all day. You can find Leon at Leon Egan Author on Instagram, or find his link tree with links to his website, his horror audio drama Tell No Tales, and more in the show notes. You can find The Hidden Bookcase on Twitter and Blue Sky at Hidden Bookcase, and on Instagram, Facebook, Tumblr, and TikTok at Hidden Bookcase Podcast. Find out more about Planar Prod at planarprod.com. Know what we should read next, or want to chat to us about what you thought of this episode's read? You can reach us at thehiddenbookcase@gmail.com, send us a DM on social media, or come chat with your fellow bookworms in our growing Discord server. The link is in the show notes. Want to support The Hidden Bookcase? Support us on Patreon for bonus episodes, audio outtakes, playlists, and other extras. Buy a book through our bookshop.org page, or consider leaving us a rating or review or telling a friend how to find us. Your whispers are the best way for bookworms to discover our show. For our next episode, which will be out on July 28th, we'll be discussing disability and romance with author D.N. Bryn. We hope to see you then, and in the meantime, you're always welcome through the bookcase.